Hey, welcome to the Expat Pod channel. I'm James, the host of the podcast, and a Brit who spent time living in Sweden. Today, I'm here to talk about my first impressions of Sweden when I first moved, and trying to give you all the kind of insights on what it's like to first set foot in my new country. So, initially, I moved in the summer. So I moved in August, which was great, beautiful time to move. If you've ever visited Sweden or the Nordics, you'll know in the summer it just completely comes alive. People do as well, in terms of how friendly they are, how generous they are with time and energy. Definitely worth visiting in summer for sure. It was also great in terms of the weather was perfect for me to go and explore. So it was quite dry in the summer, so for me to go and spend time outside and seeing where I'm living in the city I'm living in as well, with so much daylight, it meant that I actually saw things for the first month at least, in terms of knowing what's around and how to navigate everything. It made it a lot easier not doing it in the dark, which if you moved in the winter, it would be dark, rainy, cold, miserable. Summer was quite a good time for me to move. If I had a choice, I'd probably moved a bit earlier, like spring, just because I later found out it was quite difficult to be in winter alone. So going a bit earlier gives you more opportunity to make friends. What I did find when I first moved to Sweden was accommodation was really expensive. Now, Sweden's got this weird thing with first and second hand contracts and a waiting list for looking to get first hand contracts and needing a certain number of points. And those points are accrued over time, every day, because of the point. And you're only sort of getting those points once you sign up for these websites. And to do that, you need a personal number, which only Swedes get. And when you first move, it can take up to 18 weeks for that to arrive. So you really do start off on the back foot, which does mean that the best chance you have of getting a kind of property you want is to go second hand, and that can be quite expensive. We're talking, over £1,000 a month for a one bed flat, or 2 rooms, they call it. They do apartments by number of rooms. Now, you can get really lucky. You can find someone who's really just wanting to hand over the contract to you and can help you out, or you move a bit further away from the city centre and you get really good deals. But if you really want to be living in the centre where there's lots of things going on, then you are going to be paying quite a lot of money. Now, some friends of mine have kind of navigated this by house sharing, so moving in with a few people, which, if I was in my early 20s, yes, I would have definitely done that. But I was 29 when I moved, or I turned 29 literally when I arrived, and my girlfriend would visit quite a lot. And just because we want to explore Sweden together and not have that awkward moment with housemates when you're want to watch a film in the lounge and there's a third wheel or whatever, getting a house for myself. And I'd been living by myself for a year before anyway, and got quite a kind of used to having my own space and not having to worry about housemate, basically, was something that I didn't want to negotiate with. I wanted to just live by myself so I could just be on my own schedule, which made it more expensive for sure. And I imagine if you've got a family or you're moving with a partner, you probably don't want to house share, just so you have your own space as well. It is nice. It's a luxury for sure. The next thing I noticed was that everything on Sunday kind of closes. They really do have a day of rest. It's a very slow day in Sweden. The UK things close earlier, but in Sweden things just generally shut. Like a lot of things don't really happen on a Sunday. It was a day I played a lot of beach volleyball because there wasn't much else to do. I did a lot of walking and went outside and went to the sea and stuff, which was beautiful. But it was a day of really just looking after yourself, which never a bad thing. It's definitely worth having more of as I come to think about it. But if you come from a country where you can kind of get what you want all the time and things are always available, please be aware that in Sweden it's a bit different. They do shut earlier, or and you can't go and buy alcohol from the supermarket on a Sunday, because where you buy alcohol is in Systembolaget, and that doesn't open on Sundays. So if you do want to have a party on a Sunday, you have to really think in advance and go buy it on a Saturday or a Friday. which is a big thing to notice. Sustainable lager is a really cool idea. I think it's definitely quite unusual when I first got it, but you always knew what you were getting and the price was always the same, so you can kind of plan for it. But also there's a really great selection of beer, wine, spirits there. So it's an interesting take on dealing with alcohol. Not to say it's a bad thing, not to say it's a good thing. It's their own way, and it works in Sweden. It's also very expensive to buy alcohol, so you probably end up drinking less anyway, or you end up with a big hole in your pocket where money used to be because you've gone and spent it on beer or wine or whatever. The next thing I'd say is when I first moved to Sweden and I went to do a grocery shop, usually you go in, you spend half an hour getting what you want because the brands, you can read the packaging, the way it works with membership cards. You don't need to scan a barcode to get out the self-service checkout bit, because I walked past that first and I was like, why is this thing not opening for me? And then someone showed me. But I was like, no, it's just very confusing. But I spent about an hour walking around the shop just trying to find certain things, and I bought the wrong bread with the wrong ingredients because I thought it was just bread. How wrong could it be? It could be wrong. It was rye bread, which isn't bad, but it wasn't what I was expecting, which was quite annoying when I got home. I was like, oh no, I've bought the wrong bread. So yeah, just be aware of that. Make sure when you go, you take Google Translate with you if you have it on your phone. You maybe do some research before you go of things you want to buy and what brands might be the same in this country and things like that, because it will be different. You will get used to buying the same things again, but just make sure you do a bit of research beforehand. I didn't, and I just kind of went in head first, and I did find what I needed eventually, but I did make some mistakes, and I did spend more time reading stuff than I wanted to. And a friend of mine who moved, so the word for meat in Sweden is kött, which is a K-O-T-T, and he thought that they were selling some not kött, like burgers or like chicken dipper things, like dippers, and he was like, oh, brilliant, it's vegetarian, great, I can go get that because it's not meat, not kött. Where in fact in Swedish, not kött is beef. So he actually got some beef, which, he wasn't a vegetarian, but he was a bit like, oh, I didn't really want this because I wanted the vegetarian option, because he just preferred not to eat a lot of meat, and not processed meat. So he was a bit annoyed at himself for not checking it. But it's those little things where you think, oh, it must be that. It's not. So we do some research in the shopping, in the supermarkets and the grocery stores. Make sure you just do a list before you go, and maybe do a quick Google search of what brands might be where you are. It's definitely worth doing. Another thing was currency exchange. Now, Swedish krones to pounds was like 13-1 when I moved, so like 100 krones was like £8, which made it quite difficult when I was then going to Denmark. So in Sweden, I'd always divide by 10 and take 20% off. That was my rule of thumb for like guessing what the price is going to be, and it was pretty spot on. When I went to Denmark, still use the krone, so it's quite confusing in that sense, but it's a Danish krone, not a Swedish krone, which is linked to the euro. And when you go to Denmark, you divide by 10, you add some. So actually, the krone is stronger to the pound than the Swedish krone, so you get less for your money in Denmark than you do in Sweden. So when we went to buy brunch, I was like, oh, it's 100 krones, that's not too bad, £8. No, it's 12. So, you're adding, 50% onto what you're spending before in that sense. So be wary of that in the Nordics, because they all use the krone, but different krones, which did kind of catch me out initially, especially if you are traveling around. It's such a well-connected part of the world, so you can travel through Denmark, Sweden and Norway. So definitely do that, but be aware of which krone you're using. It can be quite confusing. And the last one, I guess for me, was homesickness. Now, when I first moved, I had this kind of, new experience. It was great. It was fun. I was doing lots of stuff, meeting lots of people and exploring, and every day felt like a holiday. But when you get home and you live by yourself, you just get lonely quite quickly. And when you start working or when you start going to school and everyone's busy again, those nights become quite long. So just be prepared for that. Try and coping mechanisms, schedule calls with your family, with your friends. Make sure you have access to like TV shows from home or food from home, or you can do things which make you feel like you're home. I wouldn't say you do them all that often because you want to probably immerse yourself in your new culture. But if you do feel homesick, then have your coping mechanisms available to you. I would FaceTime my girlfriend and we would do yoga with Adrian, which was an amazing tip I would give any couple who are doing long distance. And I will get into that a bit more in a future video, so stay tuned for that. So yeah, they're my kind of initial first impressions of Sweden and how I dealt with it. If you have any questions on that, if you feel I've missed something out or didn't talk about a certain part of the country, do let me know in the comments. I'll be sure to try and get back to you or make a new video to help. And as always, if you want to join this journey and watch some amazing people talk about their amazing time abroad, please listen to the main podcast and subscribe for more great videos. Hopefully you think they're great. I think they're great. And I'll see you next time for the Expat Pod.